Okay, now we're at the halfway point. I'm going to have to say that a lot of these skits that I'm putting, I have to admit, they're not really in chronological order, which is what I tried to do. But hey, if I get it wrong, I mean, on the order, who's going to call me out on it? Okay, so it was during my second official year I was starting having issues. And remember when I discussed that I was doing other skits on the side, and I got into a really huge tizzy with one of the senior pastors there. I discussed that in some other show. Don't really want to get into that again. But so I was having a lot of successes at the time, like this one. Okay, these are skits I wrote 25 to 30 years ago for a college-age group, and they were videotaped. They're on a YouTube channel known as CCF 90s Skits Nostalgia. You can go there if you don't want to hear this commentary. And it is full of, well, actually this one is not full of evangelical cringe. In fact, this is what I like about this particular one. This is actually just more of a parody of soap operas in general, but once again, the topic for CCF was relationships, which I'm told is one of the more popular topics. At least that was the one that a lot of people just kind of go to. And so I decided to just tackle the topic of kind of how soap operas show relationships as being this very convoluted thing. And a lot of the stuff, I mean, I didn't really... Okay, I actually did watch soap operas growing up. My sister liked this one, and just, if you ever watch soap operas, it just gets so strange. Just like, I mean, like a character will... You know, there's no such thing as like a couple that is just a normal couple on those things. There's always so much stuff going on like this, and so much unlikeliness happening all at once that it's crazy. And yeah, and there's murder and amnesia and all sorts of things that are happening here. This plotline here feels like it's taken out of a soap opera. This idea that there's an accident and one of them is struck blind and one of them can't walk, and then they kind of form this partnership and they fall in love, and it's like that's such a stupid romantic setup here. And I like how this guy is playing blind, especially when he does this thing on her face and tweaks her nose like that.
You see,
it's just hysterical. I don't even think this actor could keep it together. Anyway, so that's pretty fun. So yeah, there's not really much, there's no real deeper level to this sketch. I mean, if you want, you could talk about how that's... I mean, there's no way you can really compare any of these things in life to real life. But I love the fact that these characters are named after soap, and we have Zest here, who has that towel that gets in front of him. If you're not familiar, Zest used to have this ad where this guy would hold his towel like that, covering all his nakedness, just so he could say "zestfully clean," and the towel had like a "zestfully clean" thing written on it. So that's more of an allusion to that.
So what did Toast do?
I don't know. This is just I mean, this thing is pretty easy to do. You just get two people who are talking about it, and you actually play this out.
What's her name?
I feel like you could do this sketch on Saturday Night Live or Mad TV, and you would probably get the same amount of laughter to it. And I love the fact that we have somebody with a multiple personality disorder. And I realize that I think there's a proper term for that, but I mean, like I could have said schizophrenia. I don't know, and people would have bought it because this was the 90s. People didn't know about all this, that this was actually a real thing and stuff like that. But you know, stuff like this always tends to get really, what do you call it? It's just like, you know, when people see this stuff and they get it from TV, they think it's real. And oh my gosh, I think that guy with a golf club and left him for dead. I love the idea that someone with a golf club he passes out like that. That looks pretty hysterical. So anyway, yeah, and the fact they're all named after soaps. I don't even know if some of these soaps even exist now. I mean, like for example, I mean, I think there's a character named Safeguard. I have no idea if that's even a real thing. I'm sure Dial is still around. I don't know, especially like the fact that the multiple personality one is known as Alpine White Dial. At the time, I actually worked at Walmart and I stocked the health and beauty aid section, so maybe that's how I got the idea of soaps. And I think maybe I was just reading the soap labels, and I just kind of had this idea of what would happen if soap kind of had its own little opera or something. I don't know if I got that idea like that. I think just when I had this idea, I just kind of thought like, I remember pitching it as just sort of like it's a soap opera, but basically it just maintains that everything was kind of after soap and stuff like that. And I thought that was a pretty good idea, and people really liked this sketch. So much so, I remember pitching this one idea that was going to be like a soap opera years later, and I think the people that saw that thing thought that it was just going to be this again, but it wasn't, and they really didn't like it because, they just didn't really like it. So, and then here's the,
why won't these people look for
there's not really much at the end here. So yeah, I hope you like this one. I know I sure did. It's kind of one of my faves. Okay, I find that skit to be just really, really funny, and I'm thinking that somehow these skits that don't really have any message or moral are probably the funniest. I mean, I don't really know what the moral of that is, that soap operas produce like these weird relationships on them. I suppose you could sort of do a deconstruction of that and basically say, like, is the real world full of these type of relationships and stuff like that, and we shouldn't do that? I guess that's the takeaway. But maybe comedy shouldn't have any message at all. I mean, that's not to say there can't be good comedy with the message. Those guys on South Park do it constantly. They don't do it the way I did it, though. However, there's a very particular type of humor that's done on that show, and not something I'd feel comfortable working with. There's something that I believe that Christians really struggle with, and that's the idea that art has to convey something, it has to tell a message. And honestly, I think I subscribed to this a little bit too well. There was a time I had to write a paper for a Christian class, and how I believe that Christians should write a story with its theme or message first, and then develop the story afterwards. Now, I can't think of any worse way to write a story. Because if the story that you're telling is secondary, you might as well just preach a sermon. And that's what I believe most Christian movies and books that are out now. And we kind of have this whole sub-Christian culture now in movies. And major motion pictures are now being released now that have these Christian influences. And they are just sermons in disguise. They're the spoonful of story sugar that help the medicine of the message go down. And honestly, I think people just want to see stories. It's funny now that basically it's kind of like when you pour and this is where I'm going to get out of control with this metaphor. You know, like when you're pouring soda into a glass and it just becomes all frothy, and basically it's kind of like that froth is like the theme. And if you let that froth, if you keep pouring and you let that froth like bubble over, it will create a huge mess. And of course, you have to like take your time. You tell your story, and then the theme comes up. But if there's too much theme, you got to let that theme kind of go down a bit. But the way that Christians do, they just keep pouring. They let that froth just go all over the place. They don't care. They want you to, in fact, they feel like they failed in their mission if they can't get the message out. And I'm kind of going like, well, isn't the whole point is that the audience sort of discovers that message? And yeah, it is. But this is why a lot of Christian media doesn't really work very well. And in fact, this next skit you're going to see, it goes very overboard with this message on church growth. Because I think at the time we had this conference we were doing about church growth, and so we had churches from all over the world kind of come to this. And when this is the skit we had for them. Okay, like I've said before, this is a skit I did about 25 to 30 years ago when I wrote for a college age group. You can find out a YouTube channel known as CCF 90 Skit Nostalgia. You can go there if you don't want to hear my commentary. Anyway, there's a lot of evangelical stuff going on here, a lot of cringe, and in this case, the cringe is huge. I'm sure you probably recognize this, but this is based on the show Home Improvement, and the show within a show on the show, yeah, no, that got confusing, Tool Time. So yeah, this particular sketch we actually did because, we had this conference going on at the church. It was called like Activating Your Church, and the CCF was kind of part of the program, so we wanted to make sure that we showed people that we knew how to activate a church, so to speak. And I don't really want to go on into any explanation as far as like what I was doing there, but yeah. The guy who plays Tim is doing a pretty good job, and the guy who plays Al, honestly, he's the props guy. He has helped create a lot of this stuff, and I always like working with him. Anyway, so now here's the thing. I actually wasn't planning on doing a commentary on this particular sketch, because I'll have to say it's not really one of my favorites. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. It does its job at being funny, but oh, by the way, it looks like he split a table in half there. That didn't show up in the shot, but you can see it in the wide shot here. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know, I just kind of feel like, I've never really liked Home Improvement. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've watched it, but I don't know, there are some satires I do that just kind of go better than others, and this one I didn't really feel like it went all that really well, and the guy who's doing Tim is also really hamming up as far as like those grunt noises that Tim Allen used to make. And yeah, is he, well, is he, no, Tim Allen isn't exactly canceled, but he isn't exactly, I'm told he's pretty problematic to work with and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true, I really hope it's not, but yeah, that does kind of poison the overall sketch here, yeah, when that happens. Anyway, so, yeah, and another reason why I just kind of am covering this the last minute, I was originally planning on doing a commentary on a sketch called The Dating Game, but I'm not doing that because I watched the dating game thing, which culminated in a real-life marriage, and I didn't really feel like making comments on that because I really felt like the purpose of my commentary here is to show that there are some of the stuff that I really like. But as I will get into the video that I'm planning on doing at the end of this month, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that you don't see. And yeah, this part is great. I just love this magnet thing. I think I'm one of the first guys to actually be attracted to this, but yeah, I just think this is, I think this is just fun. We got members of the team to just sort of like pretend like they're stuck in a big magnet or something like that, like it's attracting people or something. I don't know. This is an over-the-top gag for sure, and yeah, but people really like that, and sometimes the over-the-top gags kind of are the ones that people remember the most. Hey, I remember this one. Anyway, so let's see. Oh yes. Now, coming up is this thing that in the script it says that Tim takes out something called an ultimate power tool, but I did not describe what it looked like. So I actually created that ultimate power tool, and all it is it's just a bunch of tools that are just duct taped together. And if you look at it, putting that thing together made me feel like Ripley at the end of Aliens. And honestly, when I just taping that together, I just like went like, yeah, that's exactly what I was envisioning that to be like, even though I never really envisioned it. So it's just this strange amalgamation here that just, I don't know, that's a really good memory for me. I don't know, this is one of those times where it's just like, a prop really works out really well. If you know anything about Home Improvement, you'll usually see Tim make something, and then, I don't know, on the show it usually just goes, it just blows up on him or something like that. And yeah, in this case, we didn't really have anything big explosive, but we kind of did a gag like a few times here, so I just kind of felt like that was enough. In this case, I think just, I think the guy playing Al unplugs it or something like that. Yeah, that's what happens. Right, Tim? Not really much of an ending, but hey. Oh, by the way, do you like the joke about the Binford and Been Forgiven tools? Yeah, I know. I wrote that. There was somebody I remember being pretty impressed by that. So anyway, I hope you like this, and I hope you watch some more. So hey. Okay, I think I mentioned in the commentary of this skit that I never really liked Home Improvement. I have to admit that the reason is because I think there's a certain toxic masculinity that happens as a result of the portrayal of Tim Taylor by Tim Allen. I think a lot of Christians sort of embrace this show back in the 90s because at the time he was sort of this super male type and also seemed like he really loved his family, which he does. I'm told that Tim Allen is a big conservative, but he hasn't gone full MAGA like some of those other 90s comedians like Rob Schneider or Roseanne Barr, real propaganda artists, and stuff like that. So yes, this is a particular sketch that just makes fun of that whole grunting thing that Allen did in Excess. Of course, you have to understand that most people at the time thought that this portrayal of man is realistic, that he's a lover of tools, cars, sports, and a lot of things that I think Christians are supposed to believe are manly. And yeah, so when I talked about relationships, I talked about how men are supposed to be the initiators. I actually remember going to a church lesson that defined man by their anatomy, that men are to be the penetrators, where women with their anatomy are to surround and protect. Seriously, this was something said at a particular meeting at this church. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of talks. I remember going to men's retreat, and there were talks about walking in maleness. Now, I have to argue that even that being a rapist would be the ultimate example of walking in maleness. And yes, that is extreme, but when you have a culture that encourages certain behaviors, they're going to go overboard with them, and Christianity is essentially that. It's kind of like how we keep hearing reports of abusive behaviors from football players. I mean, considering how much they're encouraged to take yards on the field by any means necessary, with necessary roughness, it should be understandable that they might not have a good off switch for that. So the same thing applies to the military, which trains people for combat just essentially by breaking them down and then sends them out in the field and they come back. It's just a PTSD factory, for crying out loud. Like, we have these things. We keep doing this. And the church keeps doing this. So yes, I just compared Tim Allen's Home Improvement to the rise of toxic masculinity. Maybe I should talk about Christian femininity with this musical. Okay, I'm going to keep the intro short on this. These are skits I wrote about decades ago. You can find them on CCF 90s Skits Nostalgia if you don't want to hear this commentary. And just a little warn you, there's a lot of kind of cringe on this as far as Christian cringe, evangelical cringe. You'll see why pretty clearly. But basically, this is not really a satire of anything very particular. This is more of a satire of a genre, in particular musicals. And yeah, this is just basically CCF the musical. And this was the first sketch of the year, which we always want to start out on a very strong foot. The guy you're seeing singing there, he was in charge of CCF at the time, and he loved this on paper. Like, he really wanted to play the lead role on here. And the best part about this is that opening tune was actually very different. I didn't really think that it was like, welcome to our musical, something like that. That's the way I had it in my mind. And he really made it in his mind something else. And I'm so glad he ran with it. Because, yeah, if there's one thing you know about musicals, you either love them or you hate them. There are some people, if they hear that something is a musical, they will not want to see it, and I get it. Musicals are a very different type of animal. I would actually believe that if my life were a musical, I would probably enjoy it. Lots of dance numbers just breaking out, and just everybody seems very happy, and a lot of musicals are very happy and in their tone. In this case, we definitely emphasize more of the show tunes type musical, the Broadway type ones. And we, of course, parody a lot of them, and hopefully no one's going to copyright slice me on these things, because I parody, this is from West Side Story, because, of course, why wouldn't I steal from West Side Story if I'm stealing from musicals? And you'll notice that the main premise of this is that God himself is apparently going to show up for this dinner with this ordinary person. That's the premise here. And we have this musical character there who's kind of like, I don't know, helping him prepare or something like. What is he, an angel? I have no idea. I never really defined these things. Love that way he always spins the cane with the happy tunes. Oh man, I don't know if he did that during rehearsal, but oh man, the audience just loves stuff like that. And of course, if you're going to steal from any musical, and if it's the 90s, then one musical that everybody knows is, of course, Beauty and the Beast, so everybody knows the songs from there. And Be Our Guest is one that you can just take and make it very popular. Hey, you know it is.
And you're ruining my setup.
Yeah. So, now, I guess the cringe in this is that this idea that God is going to show up at your place, and if you have a problem with that, I understand. I'm not really certain that if you believe God is showing up at your place and you're going to talk with him.
What do you mean?
There is a certain element of Christian culture that just sort of accepts this, and it's something that I think maybe it would be very hard for me to talk over and just in one of these things. I'm not trying to bash down anybody that believes they're talking to God. No, I am not. But I think when some people believe that they're talking to God, they obviously are trying to. That gets kind of into some crazy territory, because how are we going to prove that they are not or are talking to God? There's no standards of you doing. Let's see. I guess we're stealing from Sound of Music now, because again, it's a musical I think pretty much everyone knows. And I think that's pretty much how I wrote this out. I basically just said, like, okay, what songs can I take from? And now here's a song, though, that is actually original, that I kind of wrote, and I had this idea for years about, and I came from this, one time I was on a long trip, and I was listening to, like, maybe a station that was playing gospel music, and I found that it was incredibly repetitive at certain points. Like, it would be a very call and response, and the call and response would be absolutely equal to each other. So it's like, and they just went back and forth, and this lasted forever. And I love how this goes, no, I'm not, yes, I am, and it's like, and then they just repeat back.
Well, I just might be a gospel singer.
And then it just kind of gets into the big chorus kind of thing. And this is actually based, I think there was a worship song we used to do called Let Everything Have Breath, and I think I kind of stole the chorus from that. And when he goes like, no, you're not, yes, I am. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not.
This is the part where he kind of pulls the Bugs Bunny thing, where he's sort of like, where he says like, yes, I am, and then just to get the opposite reaction, and they kind of go like, and yeah. But it actually kind of reverses on him.
I'm starting to get the hang of
So anyway, I don't know how you... I mean, I remember when we were trying to do this with the gospel choir, they didn't really know what I was talking about, and I was really no help for them, but honestly, they pulled it off, so yeah. Now this song they're singing, Welcome to This Place, I believe is a popular worship song at the time, which would have been, I don't know, 97, 98, whenever this came out. Because worship music, of course, changes, and I have no idea what the stage of it is at now. So hopefully I'm not going to get copyright flagged on this, because then again, if this is by Hillsong, they probably don't care, because they got enough scandals in their name that they're trying to deal with, and a copyright thing isn't one of them. Yeah, I went there. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this particular musical sketch. This is a really good one. I actually really like this one.
He's here.
Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, I suddenly realized I didn't really have anything to talk about with femininity or anything. But I will have to say, like, I never did a sketch that dealt with women's issues or issues of racial inequality. I really think I should have. But, I mean, I did do that one sketch that had, the Dolores sketch. I can't remember what part that I did that in, but had a female main character, but they really want to have that every man / every woman sort of role. So this would probably be a good time to talk about how Christians use music. And use, I mean, it's pretty much a tool. At LFF, we had a musical every Easter and sometimes at Christmas. And one year I actually wrote that, but I'll get into that later. Now, at Sunday and Wednesday services, the church leaders would use music in their worship to help bring in the presence of God. Yeah, this is a skit that also sort of emphasized this, that you can bring in the presence of God, like he's going to show up like you invited him in for a dinner party or something. So that's kind of the way Christians use music, as a way to get out their message. They kind of soften people up. And there's... I'm pretty certain that, remember I said that a lot of my skits, and I think in my commentaries, they're oftentimes like 90% really zany humor, and then they often are they slow down, and they're followed by a 10% message. This is essentially what Christian churches do, and at CCF this was done. Essentially, you have a lot of things devoted to just a bunch of fun stuff, but at the end, you slow it down, you start playing music, and then you get to the message of it, and it helps soften people up. And this isn't really a good way to do things. Speaking of good ways to do things and softening people up, let's get to talk about how Christianity can help people. Okay, I'm going to make this intro fast. Mark Owens, these are skits I wrote about 25 to 30 years ago for college-age Christian groups, and they're on
WWJD
a
Radio
YouTube
is
channel
fully
in the
automated,
CCF
so all you gotta
90s
do is
Skits
just
and
announce the
Salsa. You can go
songs.
there if you want to watch it
Remember,
without
my controls
commentary.
here, phone controls there
Again,
and
I'm going to
there.
warn about the evangelical
And remember,
cringe, and
Dr.
there is a
Christine's
lot of it
call-in
here.
show is in
I
a
don't know
couple
if you saw the
minutes.
beginning
She'll
of
be
this,
here
but
to do
this
that.
is about
So have a good radio show.
a station
Remember,
called
just be yourselves.
WWJD.
Loud and clear.
And I think that was me at the beginning. I don't remember being in this
Can you
sketch.
believe it, Frank?
But anyway, so yeah, this is one of those times in which this happened a lot when I was with CCF.
Coming to you live.
Oftentimes I'd be given a subject that was about as vague as anything that could be.
Practice?
And a lot of times they just sometimes they were just whatever was happening in the whole Christian sphere at the time. And in the 90s, this showed up. I'm sure if you remember the 90s, you probably, and you know about the Christian movement back then, you probably remember WWJD. I mean, it was pretty much everywhere.
This is the
it
Frank
was
and Ben
something
Show
that I
on
don't think that you could really
WWJD
copyright.
In just a few minutes,
So
we have
pretty
the
much
Dr. Christine
everybody
show.
made like bracelets and jive like
me
that,
introduce
and that were
Aaron
just
Jeffrey
like,
with
hey,
I Go
what
to
would
the Rock.
Jesus do? Not only is it a cliche, it's a thought term in English,
Who's that?
and that's what I
Who's
gotta
what,
say
Frank?
about that.
The phone.
I did my best to come up with something,
phone's
so I don't
not really
remember
a-
how I came up with this idea of essentially
Who was on the
about
phone?
two guys at a radio station
I was on the phone.
who have to essentially become the counselors there
who was
instead of the
you talking
DJs.
to on the phone?
I don't know. I kind of thought that was a. Personally, I think these two really solid. I actually think this is a pretty well executed idea,
She's only
and
5 minutes.
these actors are really
Frank,
doing
I've
their
got it
best on
covered.
it, and so yeah.
So are you playing a remix?
As much as I
I'm gonna do the
sometimes, every once in a while,
Ben, you
can
can't be a counselor.
polish a rock and get a good
drag me
diamond
into
out of
this.
it, and maybe that's what this is.
Don't worry,
I say
Frank.
maybe because
I'm great with people.
there's one joke in
hit that
there
like
that
button
I'll
again,
get to it that
WWJD's
I
Radio
honestly think
Talks.
is
Hello,
one of the
everybody.
finest jokes I've ever written.
This is
Lines are
Dr.
open,
Christine
so please
Jack.
call in.
And yeah,
My name is
unfortunately,
Ben,
it's hard to
and I'll be filling in
sometimes it's
for
hard to
Dr.
talk about
Christine
some of
today.
this stuff here.
With me in the studio.
So the setup is that
my
apparently
assistant,
there's
Frank.
some
Give me
radio
the mic, Ben.
counselor host named
give me
Dr.
the mic.
Christine who cancels at the last minute.
They can hear
And
that.
then this one guy basically just says,
I
no,
think
I'll
it's
just do the
time
show.
that we
And we've
go
all had a
to
friend
our
like
first
this
caller.
who
Caller number
wants to
one.
do so much good
What's your name,
and
please?
just can't
Yes,
really do
hi, my
all that
name
good
is
because they
Jenny,
just
and I'm
don't
having a
have the
problem with my
capacity to
roommate.
do all
I
that
know just
good.
how she feels.
So, yeah. So,
Get to the problem.
yeah, and I have to admit, in watching this, this surely
What
has a
seems to be the
VeggieTales
problem,
influence.
Jenny?
I can tell that the guy on the left
She's
is
a
more like
complete
Larry, and the
mess.
guy on
She
the
leaves
right
her
is more
clothes
like
all
Bob.
over the floor and plays her
I
music
really
way
feel
too
like you
loud.
could do this as a VeggieTales
Well, it
sketch
sounds like she
with
needs to
Larry and
change.
Bob, and you would
That's
not
it.
be
Give me
able
the
to,
mic,
and
Ben.
use the same script, and you would not be able to tell the
Well,
difference.
I'm not sure how to handle
yeah.
this one right now, so I'll come back to you
so,
later.
yeah.
Please hold.
You can't put her on hold. We're on the
Oh
air.
yeah, and this is
Right,
pretty funny.
I
They
think it's
just have to
time
do this kind
that
of
we go
live
to our
thing
next
like this.
caller.
I've actually
Caller
done
number
a little bit
two.
of
Your
work
name,
in
please?
radio, and it is
Yeah,
kind of
this is
awkward when
Sean,
you're
and
live
I'm
and you
having
have to
trouble
kind
with
of
a
switch
decision.
things over, and there's kind
Hi,
of this.
Sean. How can I help
And
you?
I've been
Well, I'm
worked on a
planning
radio
on staying
station
up
where
late
if
Saturday
the
night,
thing
and so I'm
fails,
going to get
everyone is hearing you fail,
to
and
be
that's always
I'm going
kind
to be
of,
in very
kind of
much
embarrassing.
trouble
And maybe
because I
that's where I
don't
got
know
the
what I'm going
inspiration
to be
for this, I
doing
don't know.
Saturday night.
This case is
And
actually a lot
I
better
don't know
than
if
I
I'm going to
remember
be able
it.
to make it to
Oh, well.
church or not.
Yeah, but
What do you think I should
having
do?
a guy who's like biggest problem is he's wondering
that's a
whether he should
tough
stay on
call.
Saturday Night Live or
What do you
I'm
think,
sorry,
Frank?
Saturday night.
Go to a commercial.
I guess it's Saturday Night Live because that's kind of a
Right.
Freudian slip.
Me and my
these are-
assistant need to
hey,
talk
Saturday Night
this
Live
one
was a major
over.
influence on me.
So
and
I'll
I've said
tell you
that
what.
before.
There's this girl
But
on
yeah, I
line
mean,
one
come on,
with
this
a very
guy.
similar
I mean,
problem.
stay out on
I'll let
Saturday
you
Night Live or
talk
go
to
to church the next day. What do you think a church sketch is going
Hello?
to tell you to do?
Hi, this
Now, I
is
love
Jenny.
the fact
Who
that
are
this
you?
guy doesn't
I don't
know how to
think I wanna
solve
hear
the
this.
individual problems, so he puts them on the phone
We
together.
need help right now.
And coming up is that joke here. So, and where this guy
Hey,
kind
look,
of calls the
there's a number
helpline.
for a helpline right here. I'll call it.
Okay, so he calls this
Get that,
number,
won't you?
And then he gets that other phone.
Hi, is this the
And
helpline?
this is hysterical because it's like,
Well, you see, my friend and I are on this radio
he
talk
doesn't
show,
realize that
and
that's a phone
we
to
don't know how to answer
the
the
same
people's
number.
questions.
I think it's hysterical how he,
Hey, I'm
no,
on
this
the
probably
phone,
wouldn't
man.
happen. Like he would hear himself talking
what I sound
behind him. Is that what I sound like? That's a great payoff for that joke. Yeah, people
We
applauded
are the
for that one for a
helpline.
good reason.
And those
Yeah, I
people
actually
need
think that's one of the best jokes I've ever written. So,
What are we gonna tell
I'm gonna have to
them?
make a,
What-
if I ever make a
what are
top
you
10
gonna tell them?
list of top 10 jokes
Think,
that I've written,
Ben.
I would have to put that on there
What would
somewhere.
you do in their situation?
What would I do?
And of course, like most
What
of these
would-
sketches, once you get to the really
Of
funny, zany
course!
comedy, you have
Our
to get to a
station!
message because
Yeah, our
it's a
station, the
Christian
one that's
skit,
gonna
and
fire
that's
us.
what
What
you do.
about it?
Right!
So yeah.
It's
So unfortunately,
WWJD.
I'm sorry, not unfortunately, but
I think
I
it's
say
a
unfortunately because
revolution.
yeah, this is probably weird writing, but he has this revelation
Revelation.
about,
Yeah, that
hey,
too.
what would Jesus do?
I
All
know
we have to
just
do
what
is
to
just
do.
tell them what would Jesus
Hello,
do, and it's a
everybody.
very
We're back.
oversimplified message. I will admit
Sean,
that.
Jenny, are you guys still there?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that
Yes.
as it is.
Okay,
So
here's my advice.
really think. Remember when I said that the
What
WWJD
would
is thought
Jesus
terminating?
do in
I
your
will have to
situation?
say that. I think there's
yeah.
something to
I
this
don't think Jesus would
aspect
want me to
of
miss
this.
church.
And I don't know. It's
And
just
Jesus
crazy.
wouldn't
I
want me
mean,
to
if you think
do
about
what
the
I was
world that
gonna do
Jesus
to my
lived in with
roommate.
the world that we live in now. I honestly
Right.
don't know what.
Now,
Jesus
what would
do
Jesus
on some of
want you
those
to do?
things. But I'd love to see Jesus on
love my
Facebook
roommate.
or on TikTok or something
Definitely
like that.
go to
That would be
church.
kind of funny. Boy, now that would be a
Great.
good sketch
Now
idea.
go
I
and
would love to
do
do that one.
what Jesus would do.
So yeah,
Thank
crazy
you.
stuff like that.
Thanks.
Anyway,
This
so
is Dr. Ben signing off.
so I'm not sure.
It
I
feels
love this
great
kind of last
to
line
know
where he
that you've
says-
made a difference in the world.
When he's the one who started the problem in the first place. Oh yeah. Okay, so this WWJD sketch, I find it funny, but not humor funny. Basically, I think it's funny that I see a lot of Christian people, they complain that the world is full of those who are addicted to sort of self-help and support groups, always looking for the latest psychology trend they can latch onto, but Christian people do this as well. In fact, I think they do it worse. You better believe that people do treat church like therapy, and this is not necessarily a good thing. And oftentimes when a work like, say, The Purpose-Driven Life or the 5 Love Language starts to become popular, Christians pounce on that. They really start to believe, like, this is going to change my life, man. This is going to do that thing. All the things I did before where I was walking with Christ and they weren't working. This is working. Stuff like that. I don't know. The Prayer of Jabez, for example. I think that was like a big thing a few years ago. There's nothing wrong with wanting to change, and there's nothing wrong with doing some program to help you change. I know there's several things I should be working on. Still, this WWJD, which became very popular in the 90s, was really thought to be the ultimate panacea, and it was just such this, it was something that you just really couldn't copyright, but it was like on like people's wristbands, it was just on their license plates, crazy. And here's the thing that I think is really funny. I think the life I live isn't close to the life that Jesus would live. Let me explain what I mean by that. This doesn't mean that I'm not trying to live a life where I'm trying to help other people. It means that the life I live, the way that Jesus lived his life, I mean, he didn't have a job. He just wandered around and kind of like did stuff and really tried to help people and stuff like that. He didn't have a computer. He didn't have a car. He didn't have all these things that we have. Our lives are absolutely diametrically different than how that was. And I'm not really certain if we should embrace that type of lifestyle. I know there are a lot of Christian people that they shun tech, and I can understand why they might have feelings about that. But here's the thing. Oh my gosh. I mean, we can only live the best lives that we can, and we can't just simply go like, what would Jesus do in this scenario? Would Jesus want me to send this email? Jesus never sent a single email in his life. So let me tell you, you're going to have to do a little sort of thinking for yourself on this, which is something that Christians don't really like to do. They tend to want to think, they kind of want to think that their leader really likes them. So they often go to their leader and they ask what to do, which can be kind of dangerous. There's a lot of Christian counseling that goes on, which isn't really good. It's not really based on anything. It's basically based on finding Bible scriptures, which can be really misconstrued or really used out of context. And a lot of Christian counseling just boils down to this vague WWJD mentality. And also deals with stuff that can't be banked on, like, oh, just pray about it and then things will help. And it's like, well, considering how many prayers are sort of unanswered, do you want a pie chart on that? Yeah, this is not really the way to do it, but we keep doing this and stuff. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 skits for the price of 1 here, both based on Christmas. Alright, so chances are, if you've seen these videos, you know what to expect. Mark, these are sketches I've done like 25 to 30 years ago, and they were for a college-age group, college-age Christian group. You can find them on YouTube under CCF 90s Skit Nostalgia. You can go there if you don't want to hear my commentary. There's a lot of evangelical stuff here, and a lot of evangelical cringe. In this case, there's a lot of it, because extra value meal I say that a lot, actually. So I guess there's just a lot of it just in general in these things. But of course, why wouldn't there be? Yeah, this one is, I think I just posted one about Christmas, and this is another Christmas one.
Would you
And
watch yourself
I have to admit, when I was looking at all these sketches I'd done, and the ones that I wanted to do commentary for, and the ones that I actually had on tape, because some of them I don't. In fact, some of the best ones I don't, so that's a real shame. But anyway, yeah, that's something to cover up my, that's an escape clause for you. But yeah, there were some I just didn't really want to do, and this was actually one I didn't really want to do because I didn't really think this was very good. It really isn't. I'm just gonna have to say that. If this was Saturday Night Live, this would be one that you'd see around 1 o'clock in the morning or whenever they put on the sketches that they don't think are very good. Because if you watch Saturday Night Live, you'll notice the quality of the sketches kind of. They really try and hook you with the first few, and then after a while they don't get very good. But here's the thing: some of the sketches at the end are actually somewhat very good sometimes. But those are just kind of, I think I've kind of figured out before that I think a lot of the good comedy and good drama and pretty much good works, as we know, I don't sometimes happen just by accident. Sometimes that just is the way that is. So in this case, we have,
They probably made the whole
I think I was probably scraping for ideas for Christmas sketches, and I can't remember what year I did this in, because, like I said before, I've done so many of these things. I think I did about 4 or 5 solid years where I was kind of the head sketch writer of this thing, and
Excuse me.
a lot of times there are some of these that are probably done out of chronological order, that they were aired, I guess, for lack of a better term, in. So this one, I think I just pitched this idea that we all know the Christmas story about the shepherds in the field, and we all know the Christmas story about the wise men, and so and there's this is one of those things where it's like you hear this story and you just kind of don't really know what order these events happened in, and a lot of people say that the wise men didn't really show up to at the house of Joseph and Mary until like 2 years after Jesus was born. I have no problem with that. That was definitely our church doctrine as far as that goes. The shepherds, I think, saw the whole the star from there, and so basically I had the shepherds kind of be this sort of Three Stooges sort of thing, and then I had the wise men just sort of be the antonym of that. So this sketch is called The Three Wise Men Meet the Three Wise Guys. Get it? Because it's like, hey, it's opposite day, and they're just putting them together, because a lot of comedy is based on that. You know, and you have the straight guy and you have the funny guy. I guess the wise men are sort of the straight guys in this. One of the wise men is actually played by me. I'm the one, I think, in the all blue. And these wise men outfits, I think we use them for a lot of church things. Like, we did a lot of Easter sketches and a lot of Christmas productions. And so, yeah, by all in blue, I mean the one on the left. I'm the wise man. How nice.
What kind of holiday is
yeah,
this?
so okay, so I think the point of this sketch is that these shepherds are celebrating Christmas kind of the way, you know, with Santa Claus and everything, and with the Christmas tree and stuff like that.
Why do you do
Well,
that?
the wise men are really seeking after the Holy Messiah or whatever. I think that's the point of this sketch, because this is a Christian thing, so, and if around the holidays you always emphasize that Jesus is the reason for the season, war and Christmas, blah, blah, blah.
Really?
So, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think if we boil it down to all the Christmas sketches that I ever wrote, were always usually had that as a moral.
Unwise.
I think I wrote a Christmas presentation, or actually, I wrote a Christmas play once, and that, honestly, I'm not too proud of. And I'm going to discuss that when I get to the episode that I'm going to do for the month of April, which is going to be just essentially an amalgamation of all this stuff, plus all out of other stuff. So yeah, that's kind of just going to be how that's going to play out.
Telling the truth.
You know, so I'm not really, I'm not too fond about this. The reason why I'm posting the sketch in the first place is because I was going to do a sketch called The Real Skit, which, you know what, I think I'm going to probably throw that in as just kind of a bonus, and maybe I'll even come up with a commentary on that one. But that sketch turned out to be 13 minutes long, and I think, let's see, I think TikTok has a policy that you can't really post anything there that's over like 10 minutes.
This kind of sounds like our
so I just sort of went like,
tradition,
you know,
if you know what I mean.
Just didn't really feel like doing that if I could only post it on YouTube, so I just basically just kind of didn't do that. And then I just kind of posted, then I just found a sketch that I wasn't going to planning on posting and just doing it, and I've got a few there that are like that, and I'm like I said, there are some sketches that I liked, but there are some sketches that I loved. This sketch I just liked, but at least I didn't hate it. There are ones that I hated that honestly I didn't even bother posting. And if you didn't, in other words, if you didn't see it here, then I absolutely hated it, and it was an absolute flop, and I just didn't really want to talk about it. And, you know, there was a time where I was like, I felt like a lot of the things I was doing were succeeding, but they didn't always do that. And you know what? That's fine. It happens. Like Johnny Carson once said, they can't all be gems, and that is so true. You just can't write comedy gold perfect every time. It just doesn't work like that. So sometimes you get this. So and at least it has a somewhat good message. Yeah, but hey, if I have to talk about message, and Christian people love their messages when they're doing any kind of sketches, and they don't really care about plot much. But I'll get to that when I talk about this in my episode. Yeah, man. Hope you like this one. Who knows? Okay, I'm not going to really discuss the intro on this because, normally I give a little shtick about what this is, but this is a parody of the X-Files, called the Xmas Files. And since this is a Christian group dealing with this sketch, this, again, the guy that did the Mission Impossible thing also did this, using a lot of clips from other sketches. You might recognize that from the GIF sketch. That's a typical worship thing when they show the supernatural activity out in church. And they even put in some, boy, this guy must have had access to a lot of other sketches that we were doing. And, I don't know, found the faces for this thing here, so, oh gosh. The truth is in Christ. Yeah, we're going to get into some serious Christian cringe here. So I am just going to say that this was a sketch that I never really intended to do, but I tried pitching several holiday or Christmas-themed sketches here, and then I finally just said, like, hey, you know that show, The X-Files? How about The Xmas Files? And apparently there's, if you ever watch The X-Files, which I think I did, maybe for about 2 seasons, or at least I've watched them through a streaming service or something like that. I didn't watch it while it was on the air, and it was one of those shows that was, X-Files was one of those shows that had a particular story arc. It was one of the first shows that ever really did that, and it kept viewers tuning in because they kept wondering when the conspiracy was going to happen, and I don't think it ever really did. But in this case, we not only introduced that conspiracy, we solved that conspiracy, and it's all about the war on Christmas. Yeah, this is a war on Christmas kind of sketch, because it is.
There's only one way to find out. Help me out here.
Where did we get that filing cabinet from? Did we just take that from? We probably did. We probably just took that from whatever office we had. But there was a lot of props that we just kind of took from other things. Sorry about the low lighting on this, but honestly, have you watched the X-Files? I mean, dude, it was full of low lighting. And actually, I kind of think that kind of works for this. So, hey, hope you enjoyed that, because, yeah, you're gonna get that.
What's that?
So,
Copy of the movie.
yeah.
It's a Wonderful
Oh, yeah,
Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. I think I've talked about It's a Wonderful Life in one of my episodes of one of my shows, and how I think it's a great Christmas movie.
Hey,
But a lot of Christian people don't like it, and they shouldn't. They should love that
it
film,
looks like this
and I
whole
don't get
Santa
it.
thing is some...
Oh, yeah, saying that Santa's a government conspiracy to conceal the true meaning of Christmas. Oh, we are in the war on Christmas for
I don't know,
sure.
but this whole thing is headed
Now,
up by two of their agents.
And this is where we get into kind of the other things. I think we get Agent Scrooge and Agent Grinch, because why wouldn't we do that? Because, I mean, if you're doing a Christmas sketch... And I remember the guy that played the Grinch here. When you put him in the makeup, he looked like the Mask. And I was kind of going like, gosh, he looked just like the Mask. We didn't really... You know, and I think this was before they did the Jim Carrey Christmas thing. You know, that one, I think is... this was in the 90s, and that one didn't come out until 2000 yet. I'm pretty sure of that. But, yeah. So, of course... Oh gosh, what a war on Christmas. I warned you about the cringe in this, and as much as I like the setup of this thing, we're using the X-Files, I will have to say it's... I don't know. What's there?
How do you fit into all of this?
Why I make certain that all.
Oh man, I don't even know if I can do all this. Well, at least we got Scrooge in here to make a profit out of the whole thing. We got to get in Scrooge because it's Christmas, and you know, when with the Christmas comes our Christmas Carol, and we've been sucking on that chestnut for years, haven't we? With all the Scrooge, and there's just so much holiday stuff that happens, isn't there? So anyway, so yeah. And it is kind of funny that these two agents from that television show are kind of getting involved in this thing. And honestly, hey, if the X-Files ever wanted to make a Christmas special, this is what I would pitch. So, hey.
Take it from here, Scroogey.
Anyway, so, okay, I'm going to explain this next section coming up here, because a lot of the jokes are very, not only topical, but they are very local. At this point, the actor who's playing Fox Mulder starts talking about Rose Bowl tickets. Now, at the time, the church that did this is located in Pullman, Washington, which is the home of the Washington State Cougars. And they were going to the Rose Bowl that year, which was a big deal. They had never really done that before, yeah, that was a huge thing. That was back when Ryan Leaf was like the quarterback and stuff. So naturally, getting tickets to that game was considered like gold back then. So naturally, I scrambled to come up with an ending for this thing, and I just figured like, well, I might as well bring up the whole Rose Bowl thing because, what the heck, you know? I just did that. So, is the gun that he's holding a .357 Magnum revolver? I don't even know, honestly. It's weird that we have skits with guns. I bet you nowadays these days not. Actually, you know what? For Christian groups, you'd probably see skits with guns these days, but I don't know. These days, I don't think you'd see a comedy sketch with a gun in it unless the sketch was against the gun, I guess. I don't know. Oh, yeah, you should take the Christ out of Christmas. Yeah. This is the reason for the season. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that thing, but yeah. Not damn. Alright. Okay, so the Wise Men, Wise Guys skit is another skit I didn't really intended to do, but I don't know. Anyway, so the Xmas Files is what I'm surprised really worked out. Again, I think I mentioned this commentary. I wish it had a better ending, but sometimes you're struggling to come up with something, and then you just do something popular because it's popular. Hey, I'm guilty of this as well, and I know that people in Hollywood do this all the time. So, one thing I discovered in being a writer is I suddenly realized that some of the mediocrity that I see in television and movies, I'm going like, oh crap, I'm doing that. Anyway, both of these sketches that I just showed have that same theme of the war on Christmas, and I personally think that a lot of us are really sick of hearing about this. And it's really interesting to see all those Christians that want to keep the Christ in Christmas, and there are a lot of these things that are just have in common with, you know, these Christmas traditions that are really just pagan traditions that were just sort of adopted. And a lot of times, many Christians will address this, but they just want to go like, well, ours are turned toward Jesus. And if you want to see more on that, you can watch that Kirk Cameron movie. Anyway, I guess Christians just have to have that holiday, don't they? I mean, it really bugs me when Christian people insist on it's Merry Christmas, not Happy Holidays or Season's Greetings. And yeah, these skits really emphasize how Christians really need to march harder to win that war on Christmas. And it's not what I write today. And as far as my views on Christmas, you can see that show I did, or an episode I did, The War on Christmas Depression. That shows the views on the holiday season. So, okay. For now, let's go to part 5.